got some horrible reception at the moment, but Wi-Fi is bad. This is my not necessarily last, but one of my last attempts to kind of clarify BFS in general for beginners, and maybe whether you're just starting in fishing or with BFS systems, combos to try to catch fish. Right now, I primarily target bass. So this is just my opinion. None of this is true 100% science. This is one fisherman's opinion on how he handles his BFS gear, tackle, baits, rods, reels, all that. So to help you guys out, I've kind of split it up and I've started. I guess I started doing that a while back. But if you haven't, and you haven't seen it yet because I haven't released it yet, but if you're just watching this video later on, if you haven't seen a video where I'm out on the water and I've kind of got three different combos, I'm out fishing. Also, kind of helps explain what I've got going on here. Now, I'm not saying that this bait can't cross over to this spool can't use for that, but in general, when you're searching for BFS rods, reels, baits, as a guideline, I just call it ultralight BFS, regular BFS, or BFS, and then power BFS. I know some people are triggered by the word power when it's added to in along with finesse or something. They think it's an oxymoron, it's impossible, this and that. But just to simplify for myself and for you guys or anybody watching the channel, and I'll go into detail on that, but ultralight BFS will do what is simplest to do pretty much across this spectrum is basically the rods. Most rods come with a rating of being either ultralight, some even super ultralight, light, medium, medium heavy, heavy, extra heavy, all of that, right? So in BFS, ultralight BFS or super ultralights, they're over here, right? Pretty simple. Occasionally, you'll find a light that will be perfect for this area. Occasionally, you'll find an ultralight that is better off for more general, and it's not a true ultralight, especially some of your cheaper ones. So BFS is just a broad spectrum. It's a lot of stuff, okay? That's why I have the regular one. I have kind of just that middle range baits, and we'll talk about spools. But rods could, like I said, it could be a heavier ultralight, could be light, could be a medium light. It could even be a medium that is just way softer than it was either intended to be, or for whatever reason, it's just capable to do that job you're doing in just regular BFS fishing. There's not many out there, but there are still some out there that may have a medium rating or medium light that would work here. But typically this is your light rods. Then on powered BFS, it's simple for me. A bait finesse system, if you think about it, or what it was kind of coined as and what it started as, it's just a bait casting system. They used the word finesse, but that's not really the word. That's the word that kind of, I guess, complicates it for some people, because you don't necessarily have to be out finesse fishing with BFS gear. It's just a way to use a bait casting setup and not a spinning setup for lighter baits, because they are typically harder to throw with bait casting gear than with spinning gear. So over the years, it's just been, until we've gotten to the technology now, it's way simpler just to grab a spinning rod and reel combo and start throwing a lot of these lighter baits. But what I coin and use power BFS on the combos, baits don't really matter. We'll talk about that a little bit, but as far as this upper end, weight of a bait really doesn't matter. Can't decide whether it's what I call power BFS or not. Now, yes, if I'm throwing something big that's a normal size bait, and what I consider on my BFS rod and reel combo, I consider I'm more or less power fishing, but what that bait really weighs doesn't truly determine on what I call power BFS setup. So the rods here can be all the way up to a medium. They pretty much, your super ultralight, your ultralights, they're out. Most of your lights are going to make it to here, but for me, they don't come into anything when I start calling Power BFS. Can you use them? Yes, for certain baits, you can. But typically your heavier lights, your medium light, even some medium rods that are on the lighter side, this is what Power BFS. So, and I'm just going to give you a couple examples, and I'll probably mention that and why I recommend it. But the most often talked about, not just with me, but definitely here on this channel, but what you'll hear across the board on a lot of places, would probably be the Teton. Mostly in a two-piece. This is a 661, but is considered a light rod, but it will cast ultralight type stuff, and it's a I consider it a touch on the too powerful for actually trying to have fun catching these little fish you're targeting with the ultralight. But a lot of guys love it for that. If I only had this, it would definitely do the job, but I have several other rods I would prefer. But in the general, for sure. But then it also is capable of power BFS. I'm looking at all these baits right here. Have no issue throwing all of these baits and heavier. This 661 or the 662 can do it all. And how I kind of judge where my rods have to get to a certain level to be what I consider power BFS, if they can throw a lighter bait as a, 16th ounce, I don't know if that's going to focus. That's a VMC Finesse rugby jig. You guys, if you know the channel, you're like, yeah, I run this bait into the ground, right? But that rigged up with whether it be a Zinkers or worms as a regular shaky head or with any kind of soft plastic, a rod capable of setting the hook. That's the main thing. A lot of rods will throw this on the BFS rods. The problem is finding one that can throw it and get a good hook set can be a challenge. So that's kind of as a guideline what I use. And this is what I found anyway is like basically the lightest rod that can do that, but yet can go way down here and go way up and even go heavier than that, mainly with trebles. You don't want to go too thick, too much bigger or thicker of a hook, then this would struggle. So if you ask me still today, what is my favorite rod as far as to recommend to especially a beginner, even though it's it's about $85 rod, $81, $82 from AliExpress. That Teton is still right there. Can't knock it. Now, do I have a favorite rod, I guess, to recommend to people? I guess over that, it even gets more expensive, and I'll just talk about it. If you guys don't know, the Feeling rod, haven't watched the channel, this is the rod that I now, I guess, have replaced as my favorite power BFS rod. Is this a Lure Star? The Feeling rod. This is their light version. It's called the Feeling. I've got the names. I posted it somewhere else. As they get more power, they change the name. Isn't called the Feeling. The 6.8 to medium light and the medium, and then they make a 7'3". I think medium heavy. Those have different names up here, but they're all look like this, made by Lure Star. I don't know of any other name for them. They do have this, I guess it's called like a 4-axis carbon cloth blank that goes all the way to the tip. Those are supposedly Fuji Alkanite. Somebody I've heard mention that, I think it says, I don't know if that would ever focus, but probably not. I think it says Fuji on there. Anyway, very good guides. This material all the way down. This is my new favorite power BFS. Problem with this rod is, even though it's considered the same as a Teton, a light, it is not as light. It's as lightweight. It's more powerful. It gets definitely into more backbone than the Teton ever thought about being. So once you get down here, I could throw all these baits, no problem. Any of your mid-range baits, and we'll talk about weights here shortly. But it's just, I can't have as much fun as I could with the Teton, or as we'll talk about here in a minute, C doubles, the Tomas, and a few other rods. It's just almost overkill. It's like right on that verge. It's that first stage down from, regular bait casting into Power BFS. It's a plenty capable rod, but it carries that power though down from like a regular type rod. It's going to be very good rod. But anyway, so I've got the other ones I'm going to order, but it's going to be out of my BFS range. Those are hopefully going to take over all of my regular bait casting stuff. But as far as BFS, that feeling just gets into the Power BFS. So I still recommend for a guy just BFS rod, I still recommend the Kang Teton over that rod, even though that is definitely a more capable and better rod overall that I like way better. If I had to pick only one to fish, period, with, I'd probably pick the Feeling. If I had only one to pick for BFS fishing, had to pick, it would probably be the Teton. So then jumping down from that, and we're going to get out of my rods. And honestly, just take this one bait out of the equation. If I wasn't throwing or don't plan on throwing shaky heads, I actually have a whole different favorite. And the Real Test, if you guys don't know the Real Test, check him out. He's been talking about this rod for a few years now. And I ordered this rod a few years ago, and it was junk. Then I ordered actually this rod, not the other CW I ordered. And this rod is awesome. Somehow I had either a defect or something. Because back in the day, you could get the CU double without two tips. It just came with one. So, right, how they call it CU double, right? But anyway, and it was a horribly made tip that snapped right off the bat. But the Ace Hawk CU double is definitely, it can throw any of these bigger treble baits. I don't have an issue. It really does real good right here. So, well, it's Power BFS, right? Not necessarily. You may be kind of power fishing with it when you're throwing that, but I wouldn't call this a Power BFS combo. The Shimano Aldebaran is plenty capable enough. And some of you may, and it's depending. If like I try to take this combo and I went down here, because it can throw this stuff, and then I'm just in littler places, but I'm power fishing sort of, then I guess technically you could, but I don't. This is and I use the CU double with the light tip, and it covers all this. Now, if I was really going right down here, I would put the ultralight tip on it, although it's the same way as I talked about the Feeling. In my opinion, it has too much power, too much backbone into the blank to where you come down here, it just takes the fun out of it. I'm not saying you couldn't go do it, but there's other options, and I'm going to talk about those here in 1 second. So, although that, and I guess that's kind of why I have it on there. Like I said, if you take that one bait out of the equation, one of my next all-around combos would be this right here, the Aldebaran BFS with the CU double. The CU double has two tips, an ultralight and a light. So I would probably pick it, and it's cheaper. I'd pick it over the Teton if you take that one bait out of the equation. But since that's in there, I'm throwing shaky heads, I can't really do that. But it is half the price of the Teton I mentioned is like $81 to $5. That CU double can be found for $37 like all the time on AliExpress. Sometimes as cheap as like $32 or $35. So I have to recommend that. If you're just starting out, you don't even know if you're going to like BFS or not, that's probably the best rod all around, period, to get. Get that rod, get an alternative reel I'm getting ready to talk about. I wouldn't get a BFS XG if you're just getting into, not saying, you've heard the comment, buy once, only cry once, you don't buy, and then you're unhappy. But still, that's a lot of chunk. You're still going to spend anywhere $250, $300 for a Aldebaran BFS. And I think there's better reels to go down. We'll talk about that in a minute. So then let's get it over with. My favorite, actually, I sort of have two. I guess I should grab that one. I know, I'm just like Matt Allen, right, off of Tactical Bassin. He's got a bunch of favorites. I really have two favorite ultralight rods, and I'll try to explain myself, and then we'll get on with this. We'll go to the reels, and then we'll talk about baits and what I have them categorized. But anyway, I have these two as my favorites because I plan on doing different things with them. This is the stouter, more capable ultralight BFS rod, the Cascade Zephyr. You can just handle fish a little bit better. So therefore, it honestly, in my opinion, takes a little fun out of doing this fishing. You can still do it, and you'll have as much fun almost as you can with any other rod out there, unless you own a Teton 522 SUL. Because when you get into here, it's like a whole nother world on, well, it's called a super ultralight. And it's not really because of the tip, it's because of the whole blank. See how small that blank is? Let me just try to hold still so it'll focus. If you can tell the difference between the thickness of the blanks of these two. This is a true, I don't really call it, I guess you could call it super ultralight. But if you call it super ultralight, I actually have to call the Zephyr a super ultralight too because of the tip. That first, I don't know, 1.5 feet or so is softer than the 522 SUL. But then it does get into a backbone, and that's a solid tip. So it'll fold over, and I don't have to worry of snapping the rod like I would the 522s for handling a little bit bigger fish. So as you'll see, as you've probably already seen a little bit, but as you'll see in coming up on this season, coming up on Bass and Ball and Die, you'll probably see me fishing this with more, maybe these baits and these baits, but on the bigger water where there might be a chance for bigger fish. Fishing with this combo with the Dark Wolf Ultra. And then when I do go, you'll see me and Charles hitting them little bitty creeks and streams, little bitty areas, or if I'm just in that, I just want a challenge and I want to fish the smallest of baits and I want to hook, whatever. You'll see me primarily using this though on littler creeks and streams. So Dark Wolf Ultra on the Cast King, you'll probably see the Zillion with this spool right here on this guy. Maybe a little different. So then lastly, I'm going to talk about one other rod. And just because it's kind of what I consider falls in between, and I'm sure there's other rods out there on the market. But if you remember, I just picked up this, I ordered it like 2 months ago and it just came in. That Rainy Stream from AliExpress. This combo, if you guys are just wanting that. Now, if you're a beginner, I don't suggest this, but if you want some of the top of the line stuff, and some could argue the rod, but nobody would probably argue the reel, as far as just a classy, very capable reel. That BFS Shimano Calcutta Conquest BFS reel is hard to beat, especially when you put it on one of these kind of older style, old school looking trout rods. It's hard to beat. But this is a 5.3 ultralight. So it's kind of in between. I think it's going to take, it's as challenging as a 522 SUL, but it's got a little more backbone, kind of like the Cast King, but it's not as, it's definitely not a whippy as a rod, not as soft as a tip, but it can throw all of this stuff. And honestly, I feel it would be better for hook sets than a few of these. Now, I wouldn't want to throw this bait, but I can throw these topwater poppers. I wouldn't want to throw these guys. It's limited, but there's a few things in a little higher end I could still get away with this as long as they're treble hooks. I'm definitely not going to be trying to set no single hook, shaky head or nothing like that. But Ned Rigs, TRD, I guess I should have mentioned that in here. They pretty much, typically I wouldn't throw the Ned Rig, a TRD with the ultralight. I would put it more in the just regular BFS. Because some of those Ned heads, depending on which ones you have the old original ones that are pretty light wire with a very little weight. Those maybe, but then most of the stuff you're seeing nowadays comes with either a longer shank, a little thicker, so it almost has to be with regular BF. Some of it even would be on the more power. You need a little more powerful rod. But I'm going to show you that one as we're getting out of the ultralight. Now, I can't really say I recommend this to you guys over all the others, like I mentioned, because just overall awesome combo. And you could also get this and pair it up with Major Craft has some awesome choices. Well, the high-end stuff, Shimano, Mega Bass, but Major Craft has the one I'm thinking about getting, not even for the ultralight. I'm thinking about getting their light, the Fine Tail 6-foot light. It just looks like it'd be the next evolution. I got like a 5.3 ultralight, and then a 6-foot light, and then my basically the filling rod. All right, so hopefully I'm making sense. We're pretty much done with that. Did we talk about all the rods? So let's go to reels. And you don't really even need to go to reels. You just go to kind of spool sizes and weights. Like I've talked about before, that's the Black Knight 2 Dark Wolf Ultra. Very almost same spool. Different color, a few different cutouts. 30 millimeters, very lightweight. Probably the most capable out of the box BFS. Maybe the most capable reel, period. Because I'm finding out that sometimes just putting a lightweight spool in one doesn't mean it'll beat that other thing for throwing down to the lightest stuff. But I feel this one is close, and the Shimano Aldebaran I just showed you has a chameleon spool that's also there. But real quick, spools, I've talked about it, and there you can argue it different ways. But if you're throwing this ultralight BFS stuff, just like in the name of it, the Dark Wolf Ultra, I think that's why that Ultra's there, to signify ultralight. We haven't truly technically started calling reels ultralight, light, whatever, but technically this reel is an ultralight reel is their definition, because it's got that little, what is it, 5.5 or 4 or 5.3 gram spool, something like that. Crazy light, only 30 millimeters. Now here's the thing. Can these ultralight ones, like you guys heard me talk about, are they one-hit wonders? Are they are they only capable of going down here? So, yeah, really, but sometimes you can get away with bringing them up. Here's my theory on it. They'll be fine for this. That you may not get as much distance as you would with something with a 32 to 34 millimeter spool, but still lightweight, like some of your aftermarket spools. It could be argued that these are not as good, and they're probably not. Like the Alpha's Air, TW, all those variants. Going to be awesome way down here and say 2 grams and less. Probably beat most other reels, but then once you get into 4 grams or whatever, up to like say 6, they usually start losing capabilities. I'm not saying you can't use them. And real quick, I'll talk about line capacity. I feel if you're going to be considered power BFS fishing, you probably need to be somewhere around 10-pound line. Because some guys say they clarify it by lines, but I'll throw 10-pound line. I've thrown 10-pound line down here doing ultralight BFS fishing. I don't go by line ratings as to what kind of fishing or whatever. So, but I think you need to be able to if your spool capacity and what you're doing. So if you're running regular line, these are definitely the Alpha's Air TWs and stuff are probably out of your power BFS setups. But like me, I run braid. And I feel if I've got enough capacity and for the application I'm using it for, if I can put enough 10-pound braid on there to get out there and do what I'm doing, then these will work. And I don't plan on doing it with the Dark Wolf Ultra, but I've already done it and plan on doing it with the Black Knight 2. I got the spool over here. So this, and you guys have already seen, I put it on that feeling rod, and I'm out there throwing shaky heads. And with 10-pound braid, you can get just enough on there. I don't even know how many feet it is, 150 maybe, 140. It's just over 100 feet, not a lot, 120 to 40 feet of 10-pound braid. And I'm out there fishing a shaky head with what I really call an ultralight reel. I did it for a few reasons. One, it matches up perfectly with the feeling. Two, I mean, it's small, compact. Actually, I like them smaller reels on the bigger rods. They just feel better. I like the bigger reels on the smaller rods. I don't know, call it a balancing thing, trick, or whatever. So it will do it, but I don't really necessarily recommend that. If you know you're fishing down here, Dark Wolf Ultra or the Black Knight 2 or the Alpha's Air TWs if you're on the, JDM, money's not necessarily an option. But you can't beat this for $75 for throwing ultralight BFS stuff. You just can't do it. It's hard to beat. Palmability, I think it actually palms. I kind of like the feeling of the palming as well, maybe even better than Aldebaran. Okay, now mid-range, because I feel this can cast these baits and these baits better than that. And if you want an all-around, I like the looks a little better. It doesn't palm as nice, but it palms very nice. That's my all-around pick and needs less issues. Those have a few issues. So if you're just wanting to well, that looks good, Charlie. I want to be able to throw the whole spectrum of BFS stuff and possibly even regular baits. Okay? That's what I recommend, the Lingle. Awesome reel. If you're on the high end, I've got kind of a new one that I like over the Shimano Aldebaran. And I'll explain that as we talk about weights and sizes to break them out. I like this Zillion, and I'm going to explain kind of why. I've talked about it several times. But if you're out there, and it doesn't have to be a Zillion, but if you're looking for a reel that does everything, one option, and it doesn't have to be this Zillion, you can find, there's several reels out there that have aftermarket spool capability. You can track down aftermarket spools and can cover a bunch of stuff, because the Black Max is a perfect example, as I would put here. Now, I'm not going to trade this for a Zillion. I wouldn't even think about it. I was going to get a Black Max, but didn't. But you can get an older Black Max. They still make a cheap spool that is perfect for power BFS. Even the stock spool could maybe get you into a few of these baits, but you probably have to put less line. But the Black Max is a perfect example, because there's cheap spools on AliExpress, and then there's some that are still cheap, but a little more money, that are actually very capable to put you all the way down here. Charles has a couple different spools. But I like to do it with the Zillion, because I can get this reel, and I choose this over even the newest Aldebaran that's getting ready to come out, the 22, because if anything, it's going to be not as versatile as the previous one we have. It may be a little more capable down here, but what are they, like $420 now? You can get this. It's still expensive, and they'll probably come down in price. So even, like, it'd be awesome to get this down to like $200 if you could find a deal on them. But what you can do is you can buy this pool for 54, that puts you, it casts as well as any of them I've tried on these ultralight baits. But then you could also get this spool that is just an all-around do whatever kind of thing. It's going to struggle with the ultralights, but here and here you can get the job done, and it's only $13. But the stock spool, the SV Boost, can do all of this. It can get into here, but then I can throw everything. Whatever you want to throw at the bait caster can be done with that, because I use braid, like I mentioned. So what I'm going to do, I'll probably end up buying another one of these. But what you could do also, you could get the Black Max, get a few other aftermarket spools. Take your regular spool that came with your Black Max or your Zillion or whatever reel you decide to do this thing you're doing with, like I'm doing, right? I recommend 15-pound. 15-pound braid to a 15-pound leader. That's got all of your whatever covered. You can still throw some of these baits. Then take your cheapest spool. Now, I'm not saying you couldn't buy two high-dollar spools, one with a little more capacity, not as shallow as that. But here's what I recommend: get the cheapest shallow spool you can get, which usually means it's a little deeper, a little thicker, handles a little more. Put 10-pound on it. Then that's kind of your all-around. You're not really going to mess with the ultralight, because you got a spool for it, right? But that'll cover a lot of everything else. Then get your nice paper thin DIY chameleon spool, or whatever brand, Roro, Avail, whatever. Throw it in. 6-pound braids, what I'm going to run, but you could do whatever. And then you got your ultralight BFS fishing covered. Okay? So just with this one, now what did I do with that rod? I'm already missing a rod. And now I'm going to talk about baits. Give me a minute. So just with this one rod, and I'll try to show you a real quick run through here. All I got to do is I've got my, I'm setting, even in my tackle box, I could have these in a little, they make a spool, little soft cases. I've already got, my 6-pound braid to a 6-pound or 4-pound, or even if you're nuts, 2-pound leader. And I just slap that spool in. And then I slap it on my 522. And you may see this, you'll see it at creeks and streams for sure. You may see me out throwing poppers, bigger water, like that video is getting ready to come out today. Not with this, but I had a different setup. I had, what did I have? The Aldebaran? I don't know. Anyway, so I can go from that. And then I could actually stay here if I just I want to, use the little rod, but I don't really want to stay there. So here, let me switch it out. So that's my ultralight fishing. Then, if I'm like, you know what? I want to do a little more all around, and probably I want to I think I'm going to do a little power BFS fishing today. So that's when, and I know I'm doing it all on Kine Teton rods, but it doesn't have to be on Kine rods. You could have other rods, but then you go from your ultralight or super ultralight, slap in your other one with 10-pound line, and then you're fishing with basically the similar setup as what I've caught my personal best, which was 7 pounds, 12 ounces, but I can still throw. This right here will throw me way down. I can throw these baits. I may not want to throw this little single hook, treble hooked popper. That may be a touch on the iffy side, but I can get down to a lot of that stuff with that setup. But here's where I really want it, because I just took that out and I don't want to do that. I want to get here and higher up. I can take this with 10-pound test. I can throw all this. I can even go to the higher end. I can rig this up, go shaky head fishing with that right there. And all I've really added was a $13 spool. But in all seriousness, I could take, if you guys don't know about the Zillion SV Boost, I could take it and be doing a lot of that power BFS fishing. But then, and the reason I won't be able to just do that, because I don't have 10-pound test on this, remember? I've already got this one rigged with 15 because I want to be good and ready to go. So then I can't use none of these rods. Now I could have, I guess I should have shown you. I could have put, the Zillion with that spool, that mid-range on this, and been more on the power side also. And technically, now this isn't rated. This is only rated like 6 or 8, but I feel this rod's capable enough to handle 10-pound line. So then, with just a normal SV Boost, I didn't have one out here, like a medium action rod I could also get and still be throwing some baits that I've typically been throwing with power BFS, with BFS kind of rated like, light, medium light rods with, these shallow spools. But when you get a good capable SV or MGL spool in a reel on, say, a medium, like a very soft medium, like the 802 NRX, the lightning rod, you guys heard me talk about that, and there's a few others out on the market. You got to search around. You can still be down here, but then I could also, on that 802, I might want to jump all the way up to 3/8 chatter baits. I might want to jump to bigger spinner baits, and I'm up there. So I'm basically have my BFS systems capable enough to where I can cover it all. If they're typically biting bigger baits and they're bigger fish, I'm up here in that power BFS and throwing regular gear. Then if they're, if I'm just going to have fun, I'm probably right in here somewhere. Then if I'm going and I'm like, either the fish, that I don't set out for the fish to be real small, but if the fish are just the little dinks, I'm jumping down to ultralight. Or if I'm going to real little places and I know the fish can be little, I'm just going to start out with my ultralight BFS stuff. So hopefully you guys have seen a little window there. As far as weights, to keep it simple, basically 2 grams and lighter, that's your ultralight. 2 grams to say probably 6. So actually most of this would be your general BFS, but typically a lot of guys will like to throw, and usually end up on a little more powerful setup once you're up in that 6 gram range. But a good middle ranged BFS setup should be able to throw up to, I want to say like 10 grams. So like 2 to 10, which most of these fall in that. But then your power BFS, it's hard to consider it going down to 2. So really you start out about, and it's only like a couple grams, but I would say probably closer to 4. Between that 4 and 6 to like 14 grams. There's like another little window. I don't really have too many baits out there, but I need to weigh up. I can't remember exactly what a 16th ounce shaky head with the Zinkers weighs, but that would be on that high end. Like I said, a power BFS setup, if it's a good setup, it can not only cast down here to this 4 gram area, it can cast your 3/8 ounce chatterbait, spinner baits, various other baits. There's a bigger, broader range of weights here, and it kind of narrows a little bit, but it still goes up there, but you're really not going to be throwing, let's just say 2 to 10. two on down, but yes, you can take this big bait. I can take this bait right here. And this bait, I don't even know what this bait weighs. I haven't even thrown this bait yet, but I plan on it doing good. And so as I'm telling you all this, I will tell you that these aren't rules that are just set in stone, and we all know rules are meant to be broken. Okay, so that weighs 7.7. That weighs a little more than Aldebaran spool. But that's not to say, even though it feels like it weighs a lot, I will be throwing this bait for sure, 100% for sure. You will see me throw this bait, and I'll show you the rod. Whoa, hang on. Actually, I'll throw this bait on any of my ultralight rods. I don't know what this one's even rated for. Let me try to see. Yeah, this says lure weight 1 to 4 grams. And I'm kind of going to be just like Maury on this one. 1 to 4 grams, that's a lie. It'll throw more. Now, I don't know for sure if I'll break it or not. But if, in all honesty, if it breaks, then it breaks. Because I can tell you a rod right now, the super ultralight that's not rated to say it's supposed to throw that, I can throw that bait on this rod no problem. No problem. I guarantee it. I can throw this one. Now what I will do, like these for sure I won't, but like this is probably my cutoff line. Is about 6 to 7 gram baits, and a lot of guys could say, well, you know, that's I'm power fishing my ultralight combos, but nah, I don't know if you could say that. But I will be throwing these. You'll see me, maybe not the little creeks and streams, but you'll see me pull out my ultralight combos, and I'll be fishing something like this with those. But what I mainly use these for, and that's not like a rear back and cast as hard as you can, because then yeah, there could be issues. But mainly what you'll see is just my regular BFS, my lights, some of the heavier tipped ultralights. You'll see me for sure fishing these here before I go, and these here before I go to regular gear. But then, like these kind of baits, and even this 1/4 ounce, that's where your like the Teton, even the feeling, it can be done with the CU double. And then like the 802C and all that kind of stuff. And then you will see this bait's fairly heavy. What does this bait weigh? I can tell you right now, this would be a perfect bait. I'd throw this no problem on the 661 or 2 Teton. Yeah, say almost 13 grams, so just under a 1/2 ounce, but I guarantee I have no problems throwing that bait with any of my from the Teton on, any of my Power BFS combos. Now with the regular, the Toma and the CU double, I don't want to throw this. I think I will throw. What does that weigh? I don't even know what that weighs. Yeah, this only weighs like, it looks huge and big, but it only weighs like under 8 grams. It's not much heavier than this thing. Yeah, 7.7. So definitely like the lights or the heavy ultralights, probably on this too. Now this I'll throw just with like the more Power BFS, because the way you got to jerk this, these jerk scatter wraps, any of your little jerk baits. Now I've got these little bitty ones. I'm going to try to throw with the regular light gear, and they should work, but you never know. I may have to go to a little stiffer tip to get those just to function right. Then you got a little deeper diver. I've not tried this bait at all yet, but should be perfect for like the CU double, Toma, stuff like that. So anyway, hopefully that gives you just a quick look into, hopefully I covered everything. If you're just starting out, and this is one of the first videos you're watching about BFS, you know, the baits are not anything new. I mean, new to me, new to the channel, maybe new to you, but all of these baits have been some version or another, been out fishing, been used for years on regular bait casting gear, or people went down to spinning gear because they got so light. You know, a lot of guys will say, oh, I've got a regular bait casting setup that fishes this, but you can zing this a lot further on the light pretty much when you get down to say 3/8 or say a quarter, I would go as far as 3/8 down. The lighter the spool, the less line, where you only have enough line that you need to fish, which makes the spool lighter, the better off you are for casting distance, on those baits and lighter. You get to a heavier regular reel, you might still be able to get it out there. But, you may have to, your accuracy sucks and it's just not as accurate, or the distance is not as efficient as with the Power BFS setup, which could be an SV spool. Because in my mind, I don't know, they haven't really come out and said it, but it's basically the technology that's went into getting these things down to finesse enough to call them BFS is basically that old technology is what Shimano and Daiwa's got into these SV or the MGL spools. Now they're trying to get them a certain weight, but we'll talk about that maybe in a whole nother video. Because too light, and when you're casting heavier baits can become an issue. You kind of, once you get that thing rotating, a heavier wheel, right, spins faster, longer. So therefore, longer cast, you need it to stay spinning at a certain speed. It may get more distance, but that's for another video. All right. Just now looking at some of these, we're already 41 minutes in. I just now looked at the comments. Oh, Jerry says he's a rod builder. Those are Fuji K-WAG guides for sure. So Alkanite K guides, which means they're very good. Just received a zillion and you were spot on, so thanks. Greetings from the Netherlands. Wow, that's a long ways off. And you're welcome. Yeah, the zillion, man, I love that reel. Until I saw one and got it in hand, I'm like, oh my goodness, the reel test did not give this thing its justice. The zillion. And then once I got out on the field and cast it, I call the field on the water. Oh my goodness. I was like, game over. Just for a regular bait cast. If you're just in this and you're like, I don't even know if I like BFS, so I'm just watching this video. I still think, and not necessarily because of the reel, that SV boost technology, that is the reel to get. Now, I think, as far as I know, the only other way to get the boost system so far would either be with the HD, which it's more money, and technically it should, I guess, handle a bigger fish. I don't see, there's not a bass out in this world, 20 pounders, that this reel wouldn't handle. I can promise you that. This reel is awesome. But then the Steez Limited, I don't know, you guys comment. I don't think any other reel at the moment. I'm hoping they start putting this in all of them. And I'm going to talk about that too. I know this video is just meant to be for beginners, but if you're familiar with the channel and you're not, get used to it. I start talking about a lot of stuff. Hello, Jay. He said good to catch him live on a cold, windy day in Florida. Yeah, it's windy out here. If it wasn't so windy, it wouldn't be horrible. Tatula, Jay says the Tatula CT with the chameleon spool from AliExpress cast down to 3.5 grams, almost as well as the lingual. Oh, 1.5 grams, down to 1.5 grams, is what Jay says. Yeah, the only thing is the Tatula CT, I'll be honest, in my opinion, the Tatula CT palm's bigger than, definitely palm's bigger than this. I'm pretty sure palm's bigger than the lingual. Is why all the Tatulas until now, if you guys haven't noticed, the Tatula 80 that's coming out, that is more like an Alpha's frame. I want to say they're on Digitaka now, by the way. So let's give a quick update. We've kind of covered most of this. If you remember the clamber, I had it, wasn't really for me, but if you still want one, the clamber is back on AliExpress now. It's not listed as a clamber. But it's back on there. It's listed under a reel that will show up for like 80 some dollars. It's a stock one. Then there's like the clamber. The clamber is the, finesse version of that for $101, I think. So it's come down. It was 150, went down to 120 when I bought one. Now they're only $100 or $101 back on AliExpress. So you can get the clamber again. I still don't recommend it over, I like the Dark Wolf Ultra for ultralight. Lingual for all around, and if you're gonna splurge and actually get some JDM quality, I prefer and would suggest, it's gonna palm bigger than the Shimano Aldebaran and be a little heavier, but I prefer this reel and then get a few different spool options. and then you got it all covered. And one of the reasons why, and I'm going to talk about real quick, is this SV boost. And then I'm getting out of here. I've already looked. Charles is wanting me to do it, and you won't be able to see in there. I don't think I can get it on camera. There's actually two springs. There's what collapses first, way down in there. This is a deeper cutout. If you look on these, there's just there's one spring in there, and when you pull it up, it's just one pressure. It takes one pressure, rotating. As it starts rotating, the centrifugal force pushes things out and away from what's rotating, right? So that's just one pressure on all these. And this one's a good example. You see how shallow it is down there? There's no extra cutouts. You can only fit a spring of a certain size on all of these things. So if I were to try to get this to convert to another spool, I would have to try to use this whole assembly in here, which I'm not going to tear into that. So way down in there, they've actually got this, oh shoot. I was calling a rotor there for long. It's not really a rotor. If anything, it'd be a drum, but it's not really a drum. But they've got it cut out enough that another spring fits down in there, and that's your soft spring. So that little movement right there, that's what, unless you really put some oomph into it, if you're flipping and pitching, the SV part is still what an SV, it's pretty soft, so it's probably going to pop out with not much effort. Then your boost is that final spring, and this picture's probably horrible, but that right there takes quite a bit to go from there to there. And it doesn't look like a lot, but what that does, and it's not really a boost, it's more like an analog backlash system. When you get this reel set to where you're just normal casting it, and you got the brakes, dialed up to where it's not going to backlash. But say you cast extra hard, or you cast into the wind. Not necessarily, this don't really help the wind a lot, but it can a little bit. But you just put too much into it. You put more than what you were going to put into it. That boost system kind of works like it doesn't let it backlash, and it lets you cast harder. For when you want that cast, you cast it harder, it kicks out, instantly slows it down more than it normally would. But then once it gets to its normal, then it goes right back into like what it would be normally braking anyway. But in the process of you casting real hard, you may have gotten an extra 10 or 15 foot that this came out, didn't let it backlash, then goes back to normal. So you're technically going to be getting that extra 10 or 15 foot throughout the whole cast. You just got it on that first end, but then your bait's going to end up that extra 10 or 15 foot out there that you needed it to be. This is just, it's not rocket science. It's simply adding another spring. I don't know why it took them this many years to do it, but I know one thing. After trying it and using it, it definitely works. Now, could Shimano do something like that? I don't know. Is there a way to, or anybody for that matter, even, in China, they need to start working on that. I don't know how much force, what it takes, but I know these, they're not just setting in there. There is a spring in there that lets that, I'll try to show you. There's a spring in there that basically holds that down until a pressure lets it come all the way fully extended. So I don't know, you tell me, is there a way, couldn't they simply add a secondary spring of some way to, just before it gets to that fully maxed out thing, there's another thing holding it back. So unless you really cast extra hard, because I don't know how that works. If the more rotation, I know it's not magnetically what's happening with the, whether you call a rotor, whatever, inductor. This doing its moving has nothing to do with magnetism. It's strictly, once that thing starts moving, that's all about your force. When this thing's rotating, it tries to move, everything wants to go out and away from the center, right, of gravity. That's a gravitation thing, not a magnetic thing. So when you're magnets, I don't know if that's the same way though, when there's metal rotating around them at that fastest speed, is that what affects that, or is that just simply something in there that holds them down and they're going to jump a little, but do they jump more the faster that thing rolls? Or I don't know how that truly works. But it would be nice if all reels in the future that I own anyway had that dual stage, because so far for the, I don't even know how long I've used this. I have been out on the water. If you haven't seen it, I did out here in the yard, out in our cast testing zone, which is the front driveway, or out on the field in the water testing against the Metanium 30 MGL. We've put this thing, and I just stock spool, these spools, this spool casts real well. Got some sidearm issues though. Overhand, best reel or spool I found for these baits, lightweight baits, but once you do a sidearm, it changes. You got to put more brakes in. I don't know, it's weird. Anyway, guys, hopefully you liked that video. I'm going to get out of here, keeping it under 1 hour. Yeah, Jay said he drove 20 miles past Pro today to check out the Zillion. They didn't have one, nothing but BPS reels. Yep, that's Bass Pro for you, Jay. Anyway, I got to get out of here, guys. Thanks for watching. Oh, it was only 51 minutes. I thought we were about an hour. Yeah, progressive springs. Yeah, we've had those with RC cars too, but they're these long things, and half of the spring is basically a different rate than the other half. So one will compress, and then you're left with the stiffer, and then it compresses. So I don't know if they could do something like that, or here's what I'm thinking. Why not just, even if you had to make the spool diameter, and I don't know, maybe because they would rub with each other, but why couldn't you put, and just bear with me, I guess I need a better picture of this. So basically, picture two cups, okay? There's an inner ring and an outer ring to keep the springs separate. Why can't you just put two springs in where there's one? So basically, why can't somebody, and it doesn't even have to be Daiwa, why can't somebody make us a system that has, and I'll try to explain myself here. So you basically have this cup thing, I guess I'm trying to figure out here. So you're using the two springs in conjunction together. So as that's pulling out, you've got, I guess you would probably need not necessarily a progressive spring, but you would need a way for the other spring to not kick in until it got halfway, but it's something to hold it in place. Because I'm envisioning one spring is a little longer, but it's soft. And then as it collapses halfway, the stiffer spring kicks in, but one is inside the other, basically. So it's not taking up any more space on the, so you don't have to go that deep way down. And I'm thinking ways just to convert basically what we already have. Like somebody, devise a little thing you buy, because you take that out. Because in theory, they even give you that washer that is down there on almost all of these is way bigger around than, the outside diameter is way bigger than it needs to be. So if you basically took that out and, took the spring that's in there out and then had another system to basically be a dual spring. But with the SV Boost, it looks like they've just taken, there's a stiffer one out here and then the soft one down in more deep into the deal. Because with the old one, I'll show you, I got one that's actually out here. So with the old system, well, pretty much all Daiwa systems other than a fixed rotor, fixed inductor. I keep calling that rotor. So here's what you have, and I'll try to show you the spring. Now, I know if you are just new into bass fishing, want to know about BFS, you should have left about 10 minutes ago. We're on a whole nother tangent now. All right. Whoa, it just went flying. That spring, if you just saw it, it doesn't matter because it sucked anyway. This was like a knockoff Daiwa. That spring sits down in there, but on this SV Boost, there's actually that is hollowed out to where that style weakness of spring sits way down in there, and you can't really make it out. I can only, if I look the right way when I'm pulling and tug, you can tell there's a little like spacer, and then I can make out this spring, and you can tell like nothing moves. This comes up, I just can't do it on camera to show you. Until it collapses into that spacer, then you can feel the stiffer spring. So they've definitely went deeper is how they've went to that. But I would think there'd be a way to make it, you know, basically one spring inside the other, maybe half the length as the other one. And when it collapsed onto it, then it just got stiffer. And I don't think it would have to be that complicated. I think it's simply having one that's the size they have now and designing one a little bit bigger that maybe is only halfway. Maybe you glue it at the bottom. You know, you put it out around that edge and you just apply a little glue and it's glued in there. And then you put this system back together and, you know, it's like a bump stop. So when it comes up, just like on your springs on your, you got trucks and stuff, right? Whether they're coil, leaf, whatever, you got a little system that works. And then right at the end, you can either have a rubber thing or you can actually have a other spring that, you know, it absorbs that extra pressure is basically what I'm talking about. I don't know. I've worked around cars too much. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to take a quick glance for that spring that just went flying, but I may not find that thing. So hopefully you like this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Get out, go bass some bonsai, get you some BFS gear. I will talk to you later. And watch that video. It'll be dropping today. It kind of has me out there with ultralight system, regular system, and a couple what I consider more closer to BFS, power BFS systems. Catching bass all in one day. Same time from 2020. It's a flash from the past, but I was talking about pretty much doing the same things, catching them on the same baits. Not this bait. I caught them on actually this exact bait. You'll see me catch a bass. The zinkers, you'll see me catch a bass. Oh, actually, yeah, this bait here, I think I catch one. And then this bait, we didn't even talk about him, Frankenstein. So yeah, the Frankenstein, the popper, all pretty much general or power BFS, but I did catch one on an ultralight because you can do that. You can throw Ducks Frankenstein or this on ultralight, no problem. Nested springs get a patent quick. Yeah, I know. Jay keeps telling me to get patents. I should patent a lot of stuff. All right, before I get out of here, I'm going to tell you about one exhaust system I was going to patent years ago, and I never did design it. And I had a stupid name for it, but it's just funny that made me think of it because Jay was talking about that. Back in my hot rodding days, I was going to come out with a system because nobody had one. They've got these systems. You can push a button. You can do this. You can basically take your exhaust and drop to straight headers or and hooks the exhaust back up. There's actually devices. What I wanted was basically an automatic system. I was going to call it the cackler. So get this, you're hot rodding, right? So, and to make it street legal, I don't know for sure the laws. I wanted a system that could tell the pressure, and I'm sure they could easily make one nowadays with all the technology. I want to be able to pull up a stoplight, and I want to have the exhaust drop or move to the side, and I want to go straight headers. Because here's the funny part. I want to go straight headers, but the minute that those RPMs go up, I want it to kick in. The minute the compression changes, I want it to kick back and be quiet. Maybe just a little loud, soft rumble, right? Because it would freak people out. And I should have actually went more into that, but that would be so cool. And I think operating a vehicle without the exhaust is illegal. But I want to say if you're setting, there's not a specific thing to where it has to go through converters, this and that. But technically, if it did, you could also put that system just past a converter. Anyway, I'm out of here, guys. That was on my mind back in my hot rodding days, like way over all this BFS stuff for spools and all that. So maybe I'll come up with the BFS spool and I'll call it the cackler, right? Anyway, I'm out of here.